Welcome to Beach House 34. I'm your host, Christine Worth. And if you're just joining, we're diving into the trial of Stephen Avery, the man at the center of one of the most controversial and complicated true crime cases in recent history, and the subject of the Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer. This series is a full trial read through, word for word, no fluff, no filter. It's raw courtroom transcript, and I'm reacting to it with you guys in real time. If you haven't listened to episode 1 yet, you might want to go back. That's where we heard the prosecution's opening statement. And yeah, it was a lot. I will have the link to episode 1 in the show's description. Before we get started, though, let me give you a really quick catch up on the last episode. In episode 1, we heard, as I mentioned, the prosecution's opening statement. It was delivered by Ken Kratz, the district attorney from Calumet County. And if you made it through that whole thing, congrats. He gave the jury a full-blown narrative, laid out the state's theory from start to finish, and came in strong with emotion, details, and, let's be honest, plenty of ego. At one point, he even referred to it as his courthouse. Not exactly subtle. Now, just a reminder, I am reading through these in real time with you. I've seen Making a Murderer, like many of you probably have, but this is the first time that I'm digging into the trial itself, word for word. In this episode, we're shifting to the defense. We're about to hear the opening statement from Stephen Avery's attorneys. I haven't read it yet. I don't know exactly how they're going to handle it, but I'm expecting something a little bit more measured, I guess. Now, before the lunch break was taken, after Ken Kratz got done with his opening statement, they took a lunch break. And once the jury was gone, one of Stephen's attorneys had a question for the judge, and he wanted the judge to address it with the jury when they got back from lunch. So we're going to begin at that point. Let's get into it. The court says, members of the jury, a question came up during break concerning the definition of presumption of innocence. So I'm going to read that excerpt to you again at this time from the opening instructions that I gave you earlier. Then we'll hear the opening statement from the defense. Defendants are not required to prove their innocence. The law presumes every person charged with the commission of an offense to be innocent. This presumption requires a finding of not guilty unless in your deliberations you find it is overcome by evidence which satisfies you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. Mr. Strang, at this time, you may begin. So, Attorney Strang, one of the attorneys for Stephen Avery, begins his opening remarks. Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. This summer, it will be 22 years 22 years since a woman running on the beach in Manitowoc was raped and beaten nearly to death. The Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department investigated those awful crimes, and they charged Stephen Avery with rape and attempted murder on that Manitowoc beach 22 summers ago. He said consistently that he was innocent, that he had not done it. No one believed him. No one but his own family believed him. And as that case was making its way through the Manitowoc County Circuit Court, just one county over, Teresa Marie Halbach was 5 and was starting kindergarten. Somewhere else, somewhere we don't know, a man named Gregory Allen, presumably, was laughing and planning his next violent rape. 11 years later, in 1996, Stephen Avery was trying, still, to make people understand that he was innocent. DNA testing was in its infancy. It was beginning to move into courtrooms out of scientific laboratories. But we have come a long way, just a few years since 1996, and it was not as advanced as it is today. But in 1996, Stephen Avery took a chance and had blood drawn, a little vial of blood. It was sent off through the help of his lawyers, for early DNA testing. It couldn't clear him entirely. It helped, but it did not conclusively prove Stephen Avery's innocence of the attempted murder and rape on the Manitowoc beach. And when the tests failed to prove him entirely innocent, that blood was sent back in a box sealed with evidence tape to the Manitowoc County Clerk of Court. And there, in 1996, that blood vial, sealed in the box with evidence tape, took up residence in the now 11-year-old file of the 1985 case, in a box, in the open, in the Manitowoc County Clerk of Court's office. And there it sat. And in 1996, here, just a few miles north of here, Teresa Marie Halbach was learning to drive at age 16, I assume. And the irony? Could you hear me before? Can you hear me now? The court says, we can hear you better now. And Attorney Strang then continues, all right. Is it the Verizon guy who says that? Teresa was learning to drive, I assume, at age 16. And the irony is that the blood vial in the clerk's office probably is what ends up in her car eventually. And time moves forward, though, to 2002. Science also has moved forward. DNA testing has improved, and a new effort is made to exonerate Stephen Avery. Now, the blood in the vial, in the box, under the evidence tape, in the clerk's office is not, you will learn, what is used for the 2002 and 2003 DNA testing. But some materials from that box, that file, the overall file from the 1985 case, some are sent to the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory in Madison, to Sherry Culhane, to whom Mr. Kratz introduced you. And the person from the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department involved, lo, these many years later, the department was, but a person from the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department who documented the things that were sent from that old court file to the crime laboratory and, therefore, presumably looked at the box and assisted in deciding what to send. That person was, by that time, a lieutenant, or a detective, now a lieutenant, named James Link. Now, Detective Link was with the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, had his office in the Sheriff's Department that adjoins or is connected by a small courtyard to the Manitowoc County Circuit Court and the clerk's office by a small courtyard to the south of the courthouse. He was, as I say, a detective with the Sheriff's Department. Today, he is the lieutenant of the detectives and leads the detective unit. He documented in 2002 what was sent to the state crime laboratory from that file. 2002 is the year that Teresa Halbach graduated from the University of Wisconsin at Green Bay and came home a short distance back here to Calumet County to start off a promising career. In 2003, nearly a year after the necessary DNA samples were sent, the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory was able to establish that Stephen Avery did not rape and beat the woman on the Manitowoc beach, as he had been saying all along. And because of the advance of science, the crime lab was able to do better than that. It was able to establish that Gregory Allen did. Now, unfortunately, in the time that passed, Mr. Allen had violently again because he had his liberty while that man did his time. But in the fall of 2003, as the weather was cooling, the state of Wisconsin at long last joined Stephen Avery in a motion to set aside his conviction, and an innocent man also went home. Home for Stephen Avery. Home is the salvage yard of which you have seen now many glorious pictures from up high, from down low, from angles all over. The pictures are a good deal more glorious looking than the salvage yard itself, but this was home. It's the only home that would take him back after this time. Allen Avery, Stephen's father, back there in the working shirt, just as you might expect, Allen Avery started that business nearly 40 years ago on the 40 acres that he scrimped to buy. He raised sons and a daughter, and they didn't wander far from the business. Chuck and Earl joined it. Barb works elsewhere, works a factory job, but lives on the property. And this is the sort of business where the family, as you saw, shares the perimeter of this property with the 4,000 rusting, decaying cars that are the refuse, the wreckage of other people's lives. This is not a glamorous business, but it is a necessary business. It is a good business. And yes, as you will learn, you have got to get your hands dirty if you're going to be in the salvage business. Not just dirty, you get your hands bloody because you are working with rusted, jagged metal disassembling cars. And the dirt that grinds into your palms and that you find under your fingernails doesn't wash off at night. But this was his family's business, and this was home. And he rejoined his brothers, Chuck and Earl, and his father, Alan, his mother, Dolores, on the family's property and at the business. He became, again, one in the Avery clan, one man in the Avery clan, and tried to resume some normalcy of life, sharing the perimeter of that salvage yard, not in a pretty house in town on a nice stone foundation, but in a trailer home down from his sister's trailer home, both of them down from the double wide that Mom and Dad have, and Chuck's trailer toward the back, on the path toward the crusher. And it is, although not glamorous, a worthwhile business, and it's work with its own dignity. What would we do if we didn't have the salvage yards in which to find spare parts? I guess we would be reliant entirely on the big corporations that make the cars to continue to make spare parts for them and sell them at such prices they might see fit. So it would be pretty tough without the Alan Averys and the Stephen Averys of the world. It would be pretty tough for the guy who is restoring the 1968 Pontiac GTO hardtop in his garage to do that economically. It would be pretty tough for the guy working on a 1965 Mustang convertible in his spare time to do that. Maybe more importantly, it would be pretty tough for the woman who's got young kids to feed and a job to hold down and medical bills, and she just has to get another 50,000 miles out of that 1988 Oldsmobile. And for these people, maybe for you, for many of us, it's a good thing that that young woman's father or brother, or maybe she, can go to the salvage yard and keep the 1988 Oldsmobile running a little while longer. Now, in 2003, when Stephen went home, Teresa Halbach also was home. Her photography business was flourishing, and things were going reasonably well. In 2004, Stephen Avery filed a lawsuit seeking some recompense for the hole in his life, the time he had spent as an innocent man for the crimes that Gregory Allen committed. This was a serious lawsuit. It was in federal court down in Milwaukee, and there was no question but that a Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department and, in the end, the court system had gotten the wrong guy. And that lawsuit crept forward, as lawsuits do. We came to October 2005. In October 2005, about the middle part of the month, James Link and another ranking officer of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, Sergeant Andrew Colburn, Mr. Link and Mr. Colburn, both were pulled into the lawsuit, not as defendants or parties to the lawsuit, but as witnesses. Witnesses who had their depositions taken in the middle of October 2005. Now, a deposition, typically in a civil lawsuit, is an event where you get a subpoena as a witness. You come normally to a lawyer's office, the conference room, the library, the lawyer's office. Lawyers from both or all sides are there. A court reporter is there. These days, often a videographer as well. And the court reporter swears the witness under oath. The lawyers ask questions of the witness under oath, and they are recorded, much as Mrs. Teshanek is recording what we're saying here. There's no judge. It happens, as I say, typically in a lawyer's office. And these two men, Link and Colburn, were witnesses. They were witnesses about their own conduct. Neither had been with the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department in 1985. But an event in 1995 or 1996 came up in that lawsuit. And as to that event, both of them were witnesses being questioned about their own activity and conduct with respect to Mr. Avery's imprisonment. By the end of that month, unfortunately, Those depositions would begin to matter. And indeed, from the time it was filed in 2004, you will learn the lawsuit itself mattered. This sort of lawsuit, or the public cry of the innocent man wrongly convicted and imprisoned, has to be, as you will see here, I think, it has to be, as you get into the heads of law enforcement and begin to understand the process of law enforcement, this kind of thing has to be a nightmare for every good law enforcement officer. These folks do not want to put innocent people in prison. They want to put guilty people in prison. And when they get it wrong, when the whole system gets it wrong, there understandably are feelings of shame, of embarrassment, anger, humiliation, conflicting feelings about this. This is a good cop's worst nightmare, made all the more worse by the fact that Gregory Allen, free thanks to Stephen Avery being convicted instead, Gregory Allen went on to rape and beat again. This lawsuit kindled real difficult emotions, and the focal point of those emotions, naturally, was the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, which had investigated the rape many years ago on the Manitowoc Beach. And so, when October 31st, 2005, Halloween rolls along, Lieutenant Link and Sergeant Colburn not only have the lawsuit to contemplate, but now, within the last 3 weeks, have been made witnesses in it and had their depositions taken. October 31st, 2005 began at the Avery Auto Salvage Yard much as any workday would. This was a Monday. The yard was open. Not long after 8 o'clock in the morning, about 8:12 in the morning, Stephen Avery called Auto Trader down in, actually, I think in Hall's Corners, Highway 100, down on the southwest side of Milwaukee, called Auto Trader, as he had done a number of times before, and said, "We need a photographer. We have a car for sale." Now, the car belonged to Barb Yonda, the van, the minivan you saw computer images of and actual photographs of. It was there. It was hers. It was for sale. I don't expect there will be any dispute about that. And it was Barb's to sell. The calls about it were Barb's to take. The price was Barb's to dicker or negotiate with people interested in making an offer on the used van. Steve left B. Jonda as the name because that was the name of the seller. But Barb works during the day at a factory in town. She does not work at the salvage yard as Stephen did. He leaves her phone number because that's where the phone calls have to go if there's an interested buyer. And this, you will find out, is not at all unusual or sinister. It doesn't involve luring anyone anywhere. There was a car for sale. There were photographs to be taken. And indeed, on that day alone, for Teresa Halbach, with the 3 appointments we know about, this was not the only appointment where the seller of the car was not the person whose name was given to Auto Trader. The Schmidt's car was called in by and listed as an appointment for a Craig Sipple, and that little bit of confusion was quickly cleared up by the police. Wasn't really Sipple's car, it was Schmidt's car. No big deal. But she thought she was going to see a Craig Sipple, not a Stephen Schmidt's. She thought that she was going to see a B. Jonda, I suppose, not a Stephen Avery. But here's what she knew. She knew the address. Stephen gave the address. This is an address, as Mr. Kratz explained to you, and I agree, to which Teresa Halbach had been a number of times, probably about a half dozen, 5, 6, maybe more times, to take photographs of cars or the trailer for sale, for example, the photograph you saw. She knows the address. She knows where she's going. As you will see, this is not a surprise or a secret to her or to anyone else. And at 11:45 that morning, she called Barb Jonda's number and evidently left a voicemail message saying that she would be able to get there that day sometime after 2 o'clock. Now, this Manitowoc County area was Teresa's territory, so to speak, for Auto Trader. This was her freelance work, as I understand, not her main source of income. Her photography studio work, I think, probably was her passion, and this was a side job for a young photographer to generate some more money. She had a territory for Auto Trader. Stephen Avery wouldn't necessarily know what her territory is or whether she's the only photographer working it. And sometime close to 2:30, He's obviously getting fidgety. He makes 2 phone calls to her cell phone from his cell phone. And he uses the star 67 feature, you will find out, which, as I understand it, on Teresa's telephone, then no telephone number would come up. Come up is unavailable or something like that, or blocked. But he is on his own cell phone, and he may not want, not being entirely sure whose number he is calling, he may not want to be giving out his cell phone number. At least the second of those calls goes unanswered. And the time frame gets fuzzy here. Mr. Kratz said that it was late afternoon that Teresa arrived, and I'm inclined to agree with that, although it's difficult to nail down. But I think the best evidence you will hear is that although Teresa Halbach is in the neighborhood of the Zipperers, who are really just, I don't know how far, but not too far down Highway 147 and then south toward Manitowoc a little bit. So they are in the general vicinity. And I think at about 2:15, she's near the Zipperers, trying to figure out exactly where she's going to get to the Zipperers to take that photograph of their car. But I think the best estimate we'll get out of the evidence of when she actually arrives at Avery Road, which is that gravel road that leads down towards, first, Barb Jonda's trailer and then Stephen Avery's trailer, which you saw on the north edge of the 40-acre parcel. The best estimate of when she swings her Toyota down that gravel road is probably shortly before 3:30, probably not 2:45, as one of Barb Jonda's sons, Bobby Dassey, recalls it. Why do I say the best estimate? Because there is a school bus driver. 2 of Barb Jonda's boys, Brendan and Blaine, are still in Mishicot High School, and it's Monday, as I said, and they ride the school bus. And school schedules being what they are, of course, unless there is really terrible weather or something, school lets out at the exact time every day. The bell rings and kids run out the door. The bus is going to be leaving about the same time, and the bus driver will be driving the same route every day. So this bus driver, who's no relation to the Avery family or the Halbachs or anybody else for that matter, just happens to be the school bus driver. Her name is Lisa Buckner. Lisa Buckner, when interviewed by the police, says, about 3:30, when I dropped the Dassey boys off at the head of Avery Road, I looked down the road and I saw a young woman taking a photograph or photographs of a van. Now, Buckner actually isn't sure when she's questioned about this, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of that week. But Monday is the day that a young woman would have been taking a photograph of the van down near the end of Avery Road. So she's got a pretty good reason to have a good bead on this time. She's going to know her route. This is something she's doing 5 days a week. And it's about 3:30 that she sees this young woman down the road taking a photograph of the van. Teresa Halbach does her business. And the way this works is the person selling the car then gives the photographer $40. The photographer makes out a receipt for the transaction, typically also offers the customer the current copy, current edition of the Auto Trader magazine, and leaves. And that's what Teresa Halbach did. Stephen Avery last sees her going back out Avery Road and about to turn left to go back out to Highway 147. Now, somebody clearly sees her later. We don't know who, I don't know where, I don't know when. And I, like Mr. Kratz, don't know why. I do know this and can tell you that you will hear this about the evidence. One of the things that the photographers who freelance or work for Auto Trader do is to go take photographs on appointments that have been set for them through the Auto Trader office. But there is another thing they can do. They can get some money for that, obviously. Some of the $40 goes to the photograph. But there's another thing they can do, and that's called a hustle shot. The hustle shot is exactly that. It's business that the photographer hustles up for herself or for himself. And as an incentive for the photographer to hustle a little bit and, thicken the Auto Trader magazine with new customers selling cars or boats or trailers or whatever, as an incentive for their photographers to do that, Auto Trader gives the photographer a little bigger cut on a hustle shot. You are going to learn that Teresa Halbach was good at hustle shots. She drummed up a lot of these. She was likable. She was hardworking. She was good at getting hustle shots. I have no idea. I have no idea at all. And I don't think you will either, unfortunately, whether she had a hustle shot or two or three that day or not. It would not have been uncommon. But if in fact she's near the zipperers at 2:15, and as I think is probable from the evidence, she doesn't show up to the Averys until about 3:30, it's possible there's a hustle shot in there, or I suppose stopping for lunch or something. We don't know. It's possible there are hustle shots that are not scheduled through AutoTrader after the Avery shot. Because after all, I mean, if we're at 3:30, there's a good bit of daylight left in the working day, I suppose. But we don't know. What we do know is that someone sees her later, and Stephen Avery calls her later, as a matter of fact, from his cell phone. Again, he calls her cell phone at about 4:35 that afternoon. Why? Because he thought, I have got another car I would like to sell. I might as well, if she's still around or if she can swing back, I might as well have her shoot that one too. But he doesn't get an answer from her, doesn't answer the phone when he calls at 4:35. He sticks around. And at that point, his girlfriend, Jody Stokowski, is in jail serving some time for a drunk driving conviction. She's in the Manitowoc County Jail. Jody, you will learn, calls Stephen regularly. Because she's in jail, she has to call collect. And you can't call collect from a jail to a cell phone. I don't know if you can call collect to any cell phone from anywhere. But in any event, you can't call a cell phone from the jail calling collect. So you have got to call a landline. So that's exactly what Jody Stokowski does. First, a little bit after 5:30 in the evening, she calls. And jail systems, I don't know if you know this, but jail systems typically, in the Manitowoc County Jail clearly does this, cut off phone calls after 15 minutes. Inmates have a lot of time on their hands. Sometimes people they are calling don't. So the call just ends at 15 minutes. So Jody calls about a little bit after 5:30 on the landline. And then she calls again just shortly before 9 p.m. And Stephen is home. Stephen answers the phone in his little red trailer there both times. And both of those conversations go 15 minutes, almost to the second. He tells her that he's been doing a little cleaning. He tells her that Brendan, his nephew, Brendan Dassey, is over. They hassle. They are inane conversations, honestly, but they are tape recorded because every phone call out of the jail is tape recorded. So we know they happen. Does it sound like he's just killed someone? No. Does he hide the fact that his nephew, Brendan, from 50 yards away or whatever it is, Barb's trailer has come over? No. Doesn't have to tell Jody that if they were up to something no good, but he does. Brendan is around. And for all the world, as I say, these conversations simply are inane. They don't ring of someone who has committed a murder or in the midst of committing a murder or in the midst of mutilating a corpse or falsely imprisoning anyone, no screaming in the background. They are just inane telephone conversations between a squabbling boyfriend and a squabbling girlfriend. And October 31st comes to a close. It's about 3 days later, Thursday evening, about 5 o'clock, November 3rd, when Mrs. Halbach reports Teresa missing. Teresa lives almost next door to the elder Halbachs. I mean, the two houses, you can see the one from the other on the dairy farm up north of here in Calumet County. So the report goes to the Calumet County Sheriff's Department. It's a missing person report. No one has seen Teresa since Sunday, actually. And the Calumet County Sheriff's Office responds, interviews the family, a couple of close friends, and learns very quickly about these 3 appointments that Teresa had on Monday. Now, at least 2 of those, at least 2, maybe the 3rd even, but at least 2, are in Manitowoc County. Zipperers and Avery, or B. Janda. I am personally interjecting right here because I realize that up to this point, I have been mispronouncing that last name as Yonda, Janda, but it's actually Janda. So please forgive me. I'll use the correct pronunciation from now on. All right, let's continue. So the Calumet County Sheriff's Department calls for help from the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department on this missing person report. That very night, 5 o'clock, the report is made. By the end of the dinner hour, Calumet County is calling the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department for a little bit of help. And who do we get? We get Sergeant Andrew Colburn. And he's told, look, 2 places we would like to sort of check out and see if Teresa Halbach showed up on Monday: the Zipperer residence and Stephen Avery. Well, that's a name that rings a bell, you better believe. Less than 3 weeks, or about 3 weeks, after his deposition. And it is interesting that of those 2 places that Sergeant Colburn is asked to check out and inquire after Teresa Halbach, he only goes to one. He goes to Stephen Avery's home, and Stephen cooperates with him. Tells him essentially what I have told you about Teresa Halbach coming to take the picture of Barb Janda's van. Doesn't clam up, doesn't seem nervous, isn't uncooperative. That very night, November 3rd, around 7 o'clock, when Sergeant Colburn knocks on his door. Out of the blue, the same night, Lieutenant James Link, now the head of the detective unit in Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, calls Calumet about this missing person report. Now, at this time, on Thursday night, November 3rd, this is, let's be clear, this is just a missing person report. A young woman who hasn't been seen for 3 days. It's in another county. It's not even Manitowoc County at all. And nobody has called for Lieutenant Link. And nobody's called looking for him. But the chief detective of Manitowoc County takes it upon himself that night to call Calumet and offer to get involved in the missing person investigation, where one of the appointments that was to be kept was Stephen Avery. And the next morning, Lieutenant Link does one better than that. He goes out himself to Stephen Avery's trailer with another officer from Manitowoc, and he knocks on the door again, just as Sergeant Colburn had done the night before, inquiring after Teresa Halbach. Again, Stephen Avery is cooperative. Lieutenant Link asks, "Could I take a walk through your trailer? Can I look around? Do you mind?" "No, I don't mind. Come on in." Lieutenant Link walks through Stephen's trailer, sees nothing amiss, thanks him for his cooperation, and leaves. November 5th, Saturday. Stephen has left to go to the family cabin up in Crivets early that morning, where Alan goes every weekend and most of the family goes up too. Stephen has gone up on Saturday morning, but about 10:30 on Saturday morning, Pam and Nicole Sturm find the Toyota they suspect correctly, as it turns out, is Teresa's. As it turns out, is Teresa's in the far diagonal corner of the salvage yard from Stephen Avery's trailer. As you might expect, law enforcement officers descend on the property, and the first to arrive are Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department officers at just about 11 o'clock in the morning on the nose. And folks, from that point forward, from 11 a.m. on Saturday, November 5th, 2005, this is not so much a funnel approach, as you will see. It is a tunnel approach. It is a tunnel vision approach to this case. All of the feelings about Stephen Avery, all of those churning emotions, all of that within the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department floods out. You can call it tunnel vision. You can call it investigative bias. But from that point on, this investigation is about Stephen Avery and not much else. From 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, November 5th, 2005, before the police say they have even opened the car, before they say they know of any blood of any sort in or on the car, before anybody even knows whether this young woman has been hurt or killed, the focus is on Stephen Avery. Other people are asked: her male roommate, former boyfriend and current friend, Ryan Hilligus. Others are asked, do you know anything about her disappearance? Did you have anything to do with it? All of them say no. And those denials, those statements are accepted. Not Stephen Avery's. Not Stephen Avery's denials or expressions of innocence. Time and again, the police go back to Stephen Avery and ask the same questions. And he talks to them every time. Even by the time his lawyers in the civil lawsuit down in federal court in Milwaukee find out about it, and are trying to encourage him not to talk to the police, he talks. On the 3rd, to Colburn. On the 4th, to Link. On the 5th, to officers up in Crivets. On the 6th, on the 9th, he talks. And he is not believed. Do they want to go through his house? Sure. Come on in my house. On November 4th, Lieutenant Link. After the Toyota is found and the police arrive at about 11 o'clock that Saturday morning, Lieutenant Link and Sergeant Colburn come into work, and they too arrive at the Avery property. You will hear that Lieutenant Link now has changed his sworn version of when he arrived that afternoon. And he has the ability to change his sworn story about when he arrived that afternoon at the Avery property because somehow he avoided signing in on the log sheets that the Calumet County Sheriff's Department was keeping of that potential crime scene. He signed out, but somehow he managed not to sign in. And on that 40-acre parcel, after the Toyota has been turned over to the Division of Criminal Investigation in Madison, now, as search efforts are to begin on that parcel, now the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department nominally turns over control of the investigation to Sheriff Jerry Poggle of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department, this county's Sheriff's Department. Nominally, that afternoon, control of this investigation was turned over to Calumet from Manitowoc because of the apparent conflict of interest that Mr. Avery's lawsuit represents for the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. Now, if you are thinking, though, that the evidence will show you that Manitowoc County bowed out because of the conflict of interest after it turned the investigation over to Calumet County, if you are thinking that, it's reasonable, but you are wrong. Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department stays very much involved in this investigation. And what does Lieutenant Link and what does Sergeant Colburn do by the way of volunteering to help that very afternoon, Saturday, November 5th? Do they volunteer to help look in the 4,000 cars? No. Do they volunteer to search Alan and Dolores Avery's home? No. How about the pole barns or the outbuildings of the salvage properties business itself? No. They volunteer to search Stephen Avery's trailer, and they do on November 5th. And once they get into that trailer with the search warrant, well, then what these two do, and there are 2 other officers with them, one from Manitowoc and one from Calumet, what Link and Colburn do is they say, don't worry, we'll take Stephen's bedroom. And they search this bedroom. Now, this is a mobile home. If the bedroom itself is a 10 by 12 or 12 by 12 or 10 by 10, I would be surprised if it was much bigger than that. From me to the wall in front of you is about the depth and roughly the width of that bedroom in the small trailer in which Stephen Avery lives. They search, that is, Link and Colburn search his bedroom on the night of November 5th. They find nothing of interest. They see the guns. They stay on the wall. But don't bother seizing guns on the 5th. Come back to those the next day. And it is Link and Colburn who come back the next day, not somewhere on the property, but to Stephen Avery's trailer. On November 6th, they search his garage. Garage is actually between him and his sister Barb's trailer. But for our purpose here, let's call it his garage. You will find out that the Dassey boys have access to the garage. Barb has access. The family has access to this garage. But it's Link and Colburn and another detective from Manitowoc County named Dave Remaker who searched the garage on Sunday, the 6th. They find 10, maybe it is 11 something, 10 or 11 spent .22 casings. And they pick all of those up. But remember the bullet that's found under little tent number 9 on the picture that Mr. Kratz showed you? The bullet that's apparently in a crack in the floor, right smack in the middle of the garage near the front where the door is? That no one sees or picks up on November 6th, November 7th, November 8th, and so forth, through November 12th. Neither does anyone see a bullet back under the air compressor. But you will see photographs of that garage as it was in November 2005, not as it was in March 2006, when finally, lo and behold, why there's bullets, Why don't we pick up those bullets? You will see the garage in photographs, not computer simulations, photographs, as it was in November 2005. You will be able to see that although the garage is very cluttered, there's no clutter under the air compressor. There's no clutter there, where 4 months later, someone finds a magic bullet there as you walk into the garage looking at the floor. November 7th, Stephen Avery's trailer is searched again. Guess who? Link and Colburn. Now, there certainly are over 50 law enforcement officers on this property, 24 hours a day, well before November 7th, probably by sometime late the night of the 5th, certainly by the 6th. There may be over 100 law enforcement officers working this property. They have got the family excluded. They have got a perimeter around the entire 40 acres and more. They are controlling traffic and entry. They are logging in who comes and goes. They control this place. And as you heard Mr. Kratz say, they have got a number of people searching. But it's Link and Colburn, again, who are searching Mr. Avery's trailer, there in the northwest corner of that salvage yard. And on November 7th, they find nothing of interest in his home. Tuesday, November 8th, they are back. They are back in Mr. Avery's home, back in that small bedroom. And now Lieutenant Link, on what you will hear is probably the 7th search of that small bedroom, Lieutenant Link now, when he's the only one in that room, says, "Why, my gosh, there's a key sitting in plain view next to the nightstand. There is, you saw a picture of it as he says he found it, one solitary key on a ring connected to a fob. That key fob is just like, and probably is, the one that Teresa Halbach's younger sister bought her as a little present. One key and one key only on the ring connected to that fob. It's a Toyota key. And the man whom the state would have you believe bled all over Teresa's car manages not to bleed on her key. His blood isn't found there, although apparently somehow his DNA is, but not his fingerprints. And more interestingly, although this is a 1999 Toyota, and I gather she's been using this key, the state believes, every day to start her car and turn it off, Teresa Halbach's DNA and fingerprints are not found on her key. For good measure, on November 8th, Lieutenant Link and Sergeant Colburn searched Stephen Avery's garage yet again. No bullets, no nothing. And the case against Stephen Avery largely is made at that point. And a whole lot of it, as you will see, depends on Lieutenant James Link, Sergeant Andy Colburn. And they, both of them, have elected never to tell Sheriff Jerry Poggle, the man in charge of the investigation for Calumet County. They have elected not to tell him that they had their depositions taken in Stephen Avery's case probably 3 weeks earlier. They didn't tell anybody in the Calumet County Sheriff's Department that. November 8th is also the day that the bone fragments are found in a burn area hardly 20 yards outside Stephen Avery's master bedroom window. Hardly 20 yards. Small burnt bone fragments, human burnt bone fragments. But what you will learn, and you do not hear this morning, what you will learn is that burnt human bone fragments also apparently are found in one of the burn barrels behind Barb Janda's house. Burnt the same way, fragmented about the same way, and apparently human in origin. Not Stephen Avery's burn barrel, not the one you heard about, but there are 4 burn barrels to the southeast. That is the most distant corner of Barb Janda's trailer from Stephen Avery's trailer. 4 burn barrels back there for Barb Janda and the Dassey boys. Burnt bone fragments. And there are what seem to be probable human burnt fragmented bones found in the Redant gravel quarry, probably a quarter-mile south of Stephen Avery's property. Now, I don't think that the state has been able to link, through DNA analysis, those burnt bone fragments conclusively to Teresa Halbach. But how many burnt human bone fragments are there supposed to be? And when you only have one person missing? And the burnt human bone fragments in the Janda burn barrel, about which you did not hear this morning, those are fragments from bones that are not connected, not part of one limb, not connected to one another within the human body. Sort of a random mix of bone fragments, as apparently are those that are found a quarter mile to the south in the Redant gravel pit. And as you piece this evidence together, here's what you're going to have to conclude. Bone fragments, part of this body, were found where they were not burned. They were burned and moved because, again, the fragments aren't connected to one another. It's not that, it's not that an arm could have been removed and burned one place and the rest of the body another place. We have got the fragments themselves mixed up and found in 3 different places. The body couldn't have been burned in that way, in 3 different places, or even 2, if you set aside the Redant gravel pit. These bone fragments were moved. The question then becomes, the question you will have to decide eventually is, were they moved from Stephen Avery's burn area to the Janda burn barrel or the gravel quarry? Or were they moved from somewhere else to Stephen Avery's burn area, and maybe to one of the other places where bone fragments, burnt, are found? At least, did they start in the burn area and get moved somewhere else? Or did they start somewhere else, burned somewhere else, and get moved to the burn area? Now, experts here in what scientists will call thermal injuries to bodies, cremation, an expert or two, to the extent you hear that, may be able to give you some help on that question. Some help, but I'm not sure that an expert can answer this conclusively. In the end, you folks are going to have to do the hard work and the hard thinking on that. But I think when you have heard it all, you will conclude that it's at least most likely more probable that the bones were moved to Stephen Avery's burn area, not burned there and moved from that area to another place or 2. Why? You are going to find out that there are better places even on the Avery salvage yard property in which to incinerate a body. The burn area is relatively flat and scooped out a little bit, but it's relatively flat and open. It's a burn area like many farms or rural homes have. Just folks have burn barrels. It doesn't have well-developed sides to focus heat back inward on the fuel or things being burned. Neither does it have a ready external source of fuel. But the aluminum smelter at the Avery Auto Salvage property does. Big propane jets, an enclosed area. It will take an aluminum transmission down to liquid in a few minutes. The wood furnace that heats the outbuildings of the Avery Auto Salvage business, Chuck's home, Alan and Dolores' home, that's an enclosed area that will incinerate fuel in it very quickly. And because we have got probable human burnt bone fragments found on the adjoining property, the gravel quarry to the south, we can't rule out other possible burn sites. And an expert won't be able to tell you what other possible burn sites there are. Expert or not, that's not something he or she will be able to tell you. But once it's more likely, as I think you will find it to be more likely, that the body is burned somewhere else and bone fragments then are brought to Stephen Avery's burn area, then he's not guilty. Because if he's the one who burned the body somewhere else, he's not going to bring the bones back to dump them 20 yards outside his bedroom window. Neither is he going to dump a cell phone and a digital camera and a Palm Pilot in his own burn barrel. Too many other places where these things could be disposed of out in the salvage yard, whether the retention pond, whether the gravel quarry, or some other burn barrel in the woods. So once you understand that those bones probably were not burned in that burn area, the fact that they are found there, you will see, tends to suggest he's not guilty. Not that he is. It is perfectly clear to anyone around this investigation on whom the focus of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department and the other investigators, to the extent that tunnel vision, that investigative bias bled over, it's perfectly clear on whom the focus of this investigation is. The police didn't kill Teresa Halbach, obviously. They have that in common with Stephen Avery. But they want you to believe he did. They very much wanted to believe that he did. And whoever did kill her or burned that body exploited that tunnel vision. Pretty skillful. Suggesting this sort of tunnel vision, suggesting this kind of investigative bias, planting blood in her car, fairly serious allegations to make. In fact, I will take away the fairly. They are serious allegations. Understand them. That bias and tunnel vision are human anomalies. And if you conclude reluctantly that Mr. Link or Mr. Colburn, in addition to all the other interests they took in searching and focusing on Stephen Avery, planted blood in her car, you will also conclude that they put it there because they figured it had to be there. It should be there. It must be him. This wasn't so much, I think the evidence will show you, an effort to frame an innocent man. It was an intense desire to conclude that he, in fact, was the guilty man. All other possible leads for information notwithstanding. It was an immediate focus on this man, starting shortly after 11 o'clock, Saturday, November 5th, 2005. But you do not have to take my word for that. I can make this work. I am not as adept at it as I should be. I'm going to play for you 2 tapes. A part of it, just excerpts, short excerpts of 2 tapes. The first one is Saturday, November 5th, 2005 at 11:35 in the morning. 35 minutes, give or take a minute or two, after the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department first has arrived at the Avery property because that Toyota has been found. Well before the police say they opened the Toyota, well before they say they knew of any blood, well before Brutus, the friendly cadaver dog, comes along and hits. 35 minutes after the first officers arrived when the Sturms called and said, "Hey, we think we found something." What I'm going to do is scroll through a transcript that we prepared, and then I will play the excerpt of the tape for you. It is not a great recording. The transcript is not evidence. The tape will be, I expect. So if you think my transcript is wrong, listen to the tape. It's the evidence, or it will be. That's the tape that matters. The transcript may help you in understanding it or hearing it. Detective Rummaker is calling in. He's asking for dispatch. Dispatch responds, I put unintelligible. I think it's go ahead, but I'm not sure. You can decide. Maybe you won't understand it for sure either. Detective Rummaker says to the dispatcher, you will need to get a hold of the crime lab for their evidence response team to start responding to this location. Now, he's out at the Avery salvage yard, as you will hear. Dispatch says, 10-4, crime lab out of Madison, Milwaukee. Where? Our crime lab has branches in Wausau, Madison, and Milwaukee. The main one is in Madison. Detective Rummaker says it's going to be the Madison response team, and he was right. Now, Detective Jacobs joins in this radio conversation, calls in with his badge number, his squad number. I'm in code. You will find out what that means. Anything you need other than a portable for Shutter. And what you'll find out is he's talking about a portable radio for Deputy Inspector Greg Shutter of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, who is, I think, the number 2 or 3 ranking officer in the department, and who's probably also going out to the Avery property. Detective Rummaker, not that I can think of right now, Dennis Jacobs. Let's see if this works. So at this point, the tape recording is played. And here's how the tape recording plays out. Detective Rummaker, yeah, need to get a hold of the crime lab for their evidence response to start responding at this location. Dispatch says, 10-4, crime lab out of Madison, Milwaukee, where? Detective Rummaker, Madison response team. Detective Jacobs, 278, I'm in code, anything you need other than a portable for Shutter. And then Attorney Strang continues. It cut off. Sorry about that. You will get a chance to hear the whole conversation. And it continues. Dennis Jacobs says, okay, other than the car, do we have anything else? He's talking to Rummaker here. Dave Rummaker says, not yet. Detective Jacobs, okay. Is he in custody? Detective Rummaker, negative, nothing yet. Not is who in custody, but negative. He is not in custody, nothing yet. Detective Jacobs, okay, I'll gather my stuff and head out. And again, the tape recording is played. Detective Jacobs. Okay. Other than the car, do we have anything else? Detective Remacher. Not yet. Detective Jacobs. Is he in custody? Detective Remacher. Not yet. Nothing happening. Detective Jacobs. Okay, I will gather my stuff and head out. And then Attorney Strang continues. Now that's 11:35. Is he in custody yet? Detective Remacher, clearly, I gather, as I hear it, knows who Detective Jacobs is talking about, but we don't, 35 minutes after the police have arrived. And to get a better feel for that conversation at 11:35, we have to go back 5 minutes earlier when Detective Jacobs is calling in on the landline 5 minutes earlier, 30 minutes. 30 minutes after the police have arrived at the Avery property after Teresa's car has been found there. The dispatcher answers the phone. Detective Jacobs, Katie, the name of the dispatcher, just rolled into the parking lot. Can you tell me, do we have a body or anything yet? Do we have a body or anything yet? This is 30 minutes after they found the car. I don't believe so. I believe they wouldn't find the first bone fragment for 3 days. Do we have Stephen Avery in custody, though? I have no idea. You can hear it yourself. And then again, he plays a tape. Dispatch. Good morning, Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. Katie speaking. Detective Jacobs. Katie, I just rolled into the parking lot. Can you tell me, do we have a body or anything yet? Dispatch. I don't believe so. Detective Jacobs. Do we have Stephen Avery in custody? And then full disclosure, in the transcript here, something must have happened in court where the tape may have cut off, because then again, it says tape recording starts playing again and it has the same information. And I will just start with that last question. Do we have Stephen Avery in custody at all? Dispatch. I have no idea. So Attorney Strang then begins speaking again. Now, I will finish it out so you can link it up to the call. The discussion with Detective Remacher 5 minutes later. Oh, I heard him say, pick up that party. Oh no. The dispatcher says Pete, who is just another Manitowoc County Sheriff's officer, is sitting up there waiting and stopping people from going in, and that he found someone with a body-only warrant for our department. A body-only warrant is an arrest warrant or a bench warrant where they are going to take the person into custody rather than immediately grant him bail. Okay? Do we have? All right. I will talk to Remacher. Yeah, your best bet is to talk because nothing has come through. We have the vehicle, that I know. But more than that, I don't know. All right? Bye. Bye. Okay? And then the actual tape recording is played. Detective Jacobs. Oh, I heard him say, pick up that party. Dispatch. Oh no, we have. Well, Pete is sitting up there waiting and stopping people from going in, and that he found somebody with a body-only warrant for our department. Detective Jacobs. Okay, do we have? All right, I will talk to Remacher. Dispatch. Yeah, your best bet is to talk to. And nothing has come through. We have the vehicle, that I know. Detective Jacobs. All right, thank you. Dispatch. But what more? I don't know. All right, bye. Detective Jacobs. Bye. Attorney Strang then continues. So you can take the tunnel vision and investigative bias from them, not from me. Now, in the end, when you have heard it all, there's not a speck of Teresa Halbach's blood anywhere in Stephen Avery's trailer. There's not a piece of hair, nothing to suggest she's ever been in the trailer. And only the magic bullet found 4 months later to suggest she's ever been anywhere near the garage. And when you consider the forces, the emotions, the very human failings at work here, it's no surprise that the blood from that unsecured vial in the box in the clerk's office that Lieutenant Link examined back in 2002 ends up in that Toyota, because that's where it ought to be. Is he in custody yet? Jerome Buting and I will not ask you to make that kind of snap judgment here. The Halbachs deserve better than that. The police deserve better than that. You owe it to yourselves in making this decision to do better than a snap judgment. A snap judgment 30 minutes after that Toyota is found. Jerome Buting and I are going to ask you to do your job right. Think long and hard about all of the evidence. But in the end, after the full and fair consideration of everything and everyone, the full and fair consideration that Stephen Avery did not get in 2005 from the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, we're going to ask you to send him home. We're going to ask you to send him home again. We're going to ask you to get it right this time. We're going to ask you to set it right when this case is over. The court then says, thank you, Mr. Strang. Members of the jury, we're going to take an afternoon break now. We'll resume in 15 minutes and the state will begin the presentation of evidence. I will remind you again, as I will a number of times throughout the trial, do not discuss the case during the break or at any other time until all the evidence has been received. The jury then leaves and the court says, all right, counsel, we should be ready to go promptly at 2:45. And at this point, recess is taken. And that ends the defense opening statement. Okay, so the defense comes in really calm, steady, and pretty compelling, actually. Dean Strang opens by reminding the jury that Stephen Avery, he was wrongfully convicted back in 1985 for a brutal rape he didn't commit, and that he spent 18 years in prison for it. The kicker, though, is that the real guy, Gregory Allen, he went on to rape again while Avery sat behind bars. They then lay out how Avery was finally exonerated in 2003 through DNA testing after years of the system dragging its feet. Then, once he's free, he sues Manitowoc County for $36 million. And just as that lawsuit starts gaining some traction, he's suddenly the main suspect in another violent crime. Teresa Halbach goes missing, and once again, it's Avery in the crosshairs. Strang, he goes pretty deep into the timeline, like cell phone calls, police interviews, and the searches of Avery's property. He also points out just how fast the investigation zeroed in on Avery. Like within 35 minutes of the car being found, cops are already asking if Avery is in custody. There's no body, there's no blood, there's just this laser focus. And who's doing this focusing? The same two officers, Link and Colburn, who were recently questioned under oath in Avery's $36 million lawsuit. The same guys who show up again and again to search Avery's trailer, his garage, and it's one of them, Link, who magically finds the Toyota key in Avery's bedroom after multiple searches found absolutely nothing. Avery's attorney, Strang, raises serious questions. Why was Avery the only one under the microscope? Why were human bone fragments found in multiple locations, not just on the Avery property? And if Avery really did burn the body right outside his own window, which would be stupid, right? Why would he dump everything? The camera, the phone, and the bones, right where he is. Strang isn't kind of outright accusing police of murder, but he is accusing them of tunnel vision. He says they were so sure that Avery just had to be guilty that they shaped their case around that belief. The defense is asking the jury to slow down, to really look at the evidence and not let the same system that failed Avery once do it all over again. In the next episode, we move on to the state's first witness, and it's Teresa's brother, Michael Halbach. He is the first to take the stand. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back really soon with episode 3 in the Stephen Avery trial. Bye for now.